Well, it looks like China has invaded Indian territory, sort of, sort of. It's a little games going on, a little psychological, political games are actually going on. I mean, obviously, it's not some full scale invasion. I'm not saying that, but something's going on here. Basically, this I got this. The headline actually says Chinese soldiers march into Indian territory, pitch tents, and declare land for China. But it's a small, disputed area up in the Himalayas. It's 30 Chinese troops. But there's another game going on here. It's a psychological, political game, too. Because actually, China's getting a lot stronger now. And you notice, like, they're talking about these islands. Well, they belong to Japan. Well, they belong to Japan since the 1800s. But it's right around by the Ryukyu Island chain. It's east of Taiwan. So I don't know how the hell. Well, there's a lot of oil there. But this deal, I don't know what's over here. There's absolutely no mineral rights or anything like that. But they're probably playing a little tit for tat with India. And this actually tells you a little common sense. I don't care what the politicians say. Once you get a lot of military strength, you're going to exercise it. Everybody criticizes the United States because right now they're number one in the military and all that type of stuff, and they exercise a lot of control and they act in their own interest. But some of these other places could be worse. It's like you can't imagine it. It's easy to criticize the big guy on the block right now, but I don't really think. I know the United States does some bad stuff too, but it's we shall see what happens here in the future. But this bodes like bad for like what could possibly happen as China gets a lot of military strength, and it's going to because it's an economic powerhouse. Just goes along with the two, right? But basically, it was around 30 Chinese troops marched into the de facto border between China and India, basically up in the Himalayas. They went to 19 kilometers inside Indian territory, pitched tents, and the relations between the countries are actually going good. But now what's going on is the politicians, there's opposition politicians in India saying that the current people who are in charge of India are being weak and spineless and are urging them to throw the Chinese out. You see, this kind of game is, it's not, they're saying it's just one over-exuberant Chinese commander that did this, but it's not. It's not. Now, actually looking at the business aspect, what a lot of people could be looking at is like selling things to India. That's usually the way it works. Businesses, tunnel vision, money, focus all the way. Hey, you got a threat there? We got the products to sell you. That's the devil right there. It's exactly what's going to happen. But, voting for the future, a lot of people wondering about what's going to happen with the U.S. debt. Well, I can tell you what's going to happen with the U.S. debt. China's going to come here and take whatever it needs to get it back, get the money back, one way or the other. So, a lot of people are, well, let me put it this way. We're stuck with our leaders here in the West. There's nothing we can do about it. If it's their policy to freaking push U.S. debt as high as possible, there isn't a damn thing we could do about it. But the end result is probably going to be something like China flexing its muscles and demanding the money back in one type of payment or another. So, it's like China's getting, as they get stronger, they're not going to be peaceful. And that's not saying anything against the Chinese people, but it's the same, like you could say with any country. You can criticize the heck out of one place or another just by picking out the most ambitious, cold-blooded leaders that run the place, and it's not the will of the people. Just like you could say the same thing about America. You could say the same thing about China. You could say the same thing about Japan. I mean, Japan's got very nice people, but sometimes, the leadership can be bad, if you listen to what happened so many years ago. And same thing with the United States, same type of deal. But it looks like as China gets more and more power, they're going to collect their debt on the United States. This is actually, when they're doing this invasion, so quote unquote, of India, it's a test. It's a test. It's almost like a diplomatic ploy. And actually, a lot of ways, war is like not exactly when diplomacy fails. It's an extension of diplomacy. It's no longer using words or economic shenanigans or whatever. It's using military force. And actually, military force is a game of attrition where you're actually costing the enemy too much money to pursue the war. If you could destroy enough of their stuff, that's what goes on. So eventually, I say, since China's actually did this recently, in India, they're testing the resolve of India about their borders in Himalayas, and they've also tested the resolve of the Japanese with the land that was the islands that are around by the oil. Eventually, it's going to come about to the United States. If there actually is a collapse of the Western civilization or a collapse of the dollar per se, and the military strength actually gets greatly diminished, China will test the willingness of Americans to defend themselves. Now, I got to say this, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, not just against, a supposed tyranny, but I also have like a little old Chinese rifle here too, just a little old Chinese rifle, and it's like, it shoots like 37 rounds, and it shoots their stuff. So, and the AK-47 rounds, it shoots those things. It's not an AK-47, it's a Chinese one, but hey, it's semi-automatic, but still shoots. And the way I look at it, if my leaders screwed up and they caused the American government to get in debt and they owe China a lot of money, we'll go get it from those guys. You ain't getting it from me. That's all I gotta say. You ain't getting it from me. So, but I think the real solution to a lot of this stuff probably, as crazy as it sounds, is probably lots of weed. Because, these 30 Chinese troops that are like out there in Indian territory right now, they should just like go fly over them with like a C-130, parachute lots of packets of weed, get them high, and they'll be disorientated if they smoke enough of it, if they do like an ounce a day or something, and they'll probably wander off into the woods and, whatever, floating on clouds, because that's probably your answer to a lot of these jerks like Zhirinovsky and Russia and stuff. But it looks like China's flexing its muscles, and that bodes bad for the future too, because as they get more and more economic strength and the debt gets worse and worse in the United States, you know what they're going to do? They're going to flex their muscles. But it's a good thing the Americans are individually armed, because, the Americans aren't going to put up with it. That's all there is to it. No, we're not going to deal with it. I mean, if our leaders did something stupid, we ain't going to freaking pay the price. That's all there is to it. You can get it from our leaders. That's all I got to say.